I'm with Des Walsh today and we're discussing LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a tool for small business, professionals, self-employed and students, and probably many other groups, but our focus today will be on some of those areas. Des has written a book when LinkedIn first came out and continues to give presentations and discussions on LinkedIn. I welcome you, Des. Thank you very much for coming along and chatting today.
Thanks, Frank.
Obviously, as Productive ICT and the IT Forum is about IT professionals and IT businesses, what I'd like to talk to you about is how LinkedIn fits in for IT professionals, IT small businesses, and self-employed IT people.
Right.
So, can you explain to me what LinkedIn is from the layman's point of view?
Okay. I'll first mention what I think a lot of people think of it as, which is a place to put a resume where someone might hire you for a job. And quite often when I talk to business people, kind of solo entrepreneurs, they say, well, I'm not looking for a job, why would I be on LinkedIn? So they're kind of missing the point of where it is at this stage, because we're talking, 13 years ago, I think, LinkedIn got started, and it was quite a different kind of animal then from what it is now. But so what it is really now is another social networking platform, but with a strong emphasis on business and professional industries, so that it's kind of not so much for people hooking up or having chats or swapping recipes or whatever. It's much more about people wanting to do business, whether it's a matter of hiring somebody or being hired, or a matter of people forming business relationships, joint ventures, etc.
Okay, so is there any difference from a small business, self-employed, employed point of view of the way you should use LinkedIn?
Well, I think there is, Frank, and I tend to focus on the small business side of things, small to medium business and individual entrepreneurs, rather than people looking for a job. There are people who specialise in helping people use LinkedIn to get jobs. There are people who specialise in helping recruiters to use LinkedIn better. And in fact, the book that I wrote with my colleague Bill Vick in Dallas, Texas, who's a headhunter from way back, was about that. It was about LinkedIn for recruiting. That's like 10, 11, 12 years ago now, maybe more. That's a long time ago, and things have changed a lot. But if you're so let's take someone who's looking for a job, or they're in a job and they'd like to get another one, and they want to have a profile up there that appeals to recruiters. That's a bit tricky because sometimes that's going through a process, a human resources process, which requires certain keywords and structures and so forth. And I don't specialise in that. But if we come back to the small business owner, the entrepreneur looking for joint venture partners, etc., or looking for people to hire their business rather than them individually, what I tell people is, don't think about resumes, think about your story. Because what they want to know is this the kind of person or company we think can help us with this problem? And then I take it back a step and say, instead of seeing this as somewhere where you put your best foot forward straight away, think about your prospect, your ideal client, and present yourself on your LinkedIn profile as someone, answer to their prayers. So that a LinkedIn profile for, and even people looking for a job should do that. They should think about the potential employer and what they're looking for. But I'm coming back to the small business operator, small IT company, trying to get big business to engage them, to not just list the companies they've worked for, because a lot of people do that. They just list the company, and they list their degrees and their specialisation capabilities and the programming languages they know and all of that, till I think some people's eyes would blur, But instead to say something that appeals to the potential host. So say you want to work in, say you work in the financial services industry. You might start by having a paragraph which says, with all the changes going on I'm making this up, Frank, all the changes going on in the financial services industry, the massive readjustments being made through rapid adaptation of software, introduction of artificial intelligence and so forth, it's understandable that many companies are wondering how to handle this strategically. You know? Then say why your company is great at handling this sort of problem strategically. So you state the problem, and then you present your business, and then tell your story. Don't just list the things you're good at. Don't just list the programming language. You can put them in, but say we have worked in this area for 25 years, you know, and we are constantly updating our knowledge. So you're not just the old 25-year-old guys, you know, 25 years ago people. So it's that telling stories that's so important. And then I would say, and this is not so much for people putting their resume out for a job, but certainly for businesses operating independently, looking sort of business-to-business relationship, think about relationship and forget about how many people you've got in your LinkedIn network. So I've got some of the old hardcore LinkedIn numbers gatherers will think this is a bit pathetic, but my numbers are only about 3,000, but they're all very much selected, you know. But I don't think about those numbers. I think, where are the people working in the industries I want to work in? So is that making some sense?
It does, yes.
And try to build relationships with them.
From my understanding, you're saying that small business really needs to look at LinkedIn differently to the way a lot of people do, and see that it's a way that they can actually lift their profile, but in a way that connects with the people rather than just brags about what they do.
Yeah.
And that's really
you know,
important.
it's sort of basic marketing. I was running a workshop on this at one stage, and someone said, "This is basic marketing." I said, "Yes." It's just that LinkedIn platform's the enabler. And just as if you book a room in a reception centre and you put on a networking function and you invite people from your industry and you provide a few drinks and so on, you want business to come out of that. When you go on LinkedIn, you want business to come out of it. And so that will depend on relationships. It'll depend on conversations starting, won't it? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you and I can, to be personal, you and I believe, have a better basis on which to work together because we've more than once sat in a coffee shop and talked about all sorts of things, not just about business, about life, about, you know, personal development, all sorts of things. And similarly, on LinkedIn, you can start to build those relationships and those conversations. When you send a message to someone and say, "Hey, I'm looking for someone, a company that's doing this sort of work, do you know anybody?" You've built a relationship. They're not going to ignore that. But if you've only added them to your network and never contacted them, or only contacted them to pitch something to them, they'll get very good at deleting your message.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, if we follow on with that conversation, there are a number of LinkedIn people that seem to do that approach where they'll ask you to become part of the network, and then the first thing they do is pitch work.
Yeah.
What's your feedback from that perspective to those type of organisations?
A number of the people that I work with who are LinkedIn professionals would say they'd be inclined to delete them straight away because they don't get it. They don't understand what it's about. And some of them, you know, will tell you how successful they are, and that may be so. But I approach it much more by trying to share something. I mean, always, when I connect with someone new, I always ask them, "Is there anything I can do to help you? Let me know anytime." And people sometimes give me really difficult things to try and solve, and sometimes I have to say, "I can't help with that, but maybe you try this person." Just as we do in ordinary business relationships. And but that idea, you know, that business of made a connection, pitch me, is like going to a barbecue and saying, "Hi Frank, I'm a business coach. Do you need my services? I've done this, this, this and this." And you'd say, "Excuse me, I've just got to talk to someone over there."
Yes.
Is that right?
So you're right. So it's people need to look at LinkedIn not as a piece of software per se, but as a way of communicating a bit more broadly and continuing relationships.
I say it's not as much fun as Facebook. It's not as sexy as Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. It's serious business, you know. But there is room for some lightheartedness, but it's primarily there for business.
I noticed
It's still a social platform.
Okay, that's good, and I appreciate that. I've noticed that you can have LinkedIn pages for company pages as well as the profiles.
You can.
How do you use the company page versus the personal profile?
Yeah. The company page, a lot of people don't even know it exists. And that's a pity because sometimes LinkedIn will put a company page in there for you, which is not saying what you want to say. So I always encourage people to spend a bit of time, set up a company page, even if you don't put a lot of work into it. The advantage of the company page is that there are some ways you can present information there that are not so easily available with your personal profile. Also, someone who's thinking of, when I'm thinking of approaching a company, or I get an approach from a company, I want to know more about it, I will go to their company page and I'll look who's connected with that. And I'll see if there's anybody I know. Because sometimes I might find on the company page, linked to a profile of somebody I know, and I can ring them and say, hey, who should I talk to about in human resources or executive training or whatever it happens to be. Whereas otherwise I'm going in cold. Now, there's a little trick to this, and I think it's a benefit to people to know this if they don't already, which is how you are listed in your current company on your personal profile needs to be exactly the same as the name of your company that you have on the company page. So let's say you had a company called Frank Yardley and Associates, and you used the ampersand, and somebody else put their profile, so you've got somebody working for you and they put their profile up on LinkedIn and it says Frank Yardley A&D Associates. That's not going to get linked to the company page. Dumb, I know, from a programming point of view, but that's the reality. So exactly the same. And that's why I often find a company where I know there are maybe 50 people has only 20 of them on the site, and the CEO's not there, and the chief finance officer's not there, because they're relying on someone else usually to put it up for them. So that's another little clue. I'd say take personal responsibility for your own profile and say, is that how my friends that I play golf with or I play tennis with and that I do business with see me, or is that how my assistant, with all goodwill in the world, sees me?
Okay, thank you.
You'd be surprised at how many senior executives don't know what's there about them.
And okay, if we follow on with that, how important is it for you as an individual to make sure that your profile reflects what's going on now, rather than a lot of the times we leave it for months and then we'll see over years. When you've got a spare time, you might look at it and then you'll ignore it.
Yes.
What's your suggestion about maintaining it and keeping it up to date?
Well, two simple suggestions. I'd diarise it that, let's be realistic. Maybe every 3 months you check it, at least every 6 months. And the other thing that I tell people to do is get someone you know and who respects you and knows what you do to read your profile. And I'll give you one example of where I was able to help someone with that. A guy in Canada, and I read his profile and I contacted him. I said, mate, this isn't you. You've got all these skills and you've listed them in a way, but people aren't going to get your particular genius, because he was a tech guy, but he was great at explaining things in a non-technical way, communicating, had terrific personal qualities. So I said, for instance, and I rewrote his whole profile. He said, thank you, and he just put that up, So there's a wonderful woman here on the Gold Coast who's also an executive coach, and a couple of years ago I said, will you have a look at my profile and give me some feedback? And she came back and she said, no, I'm telling you, I should have known this, but we'll, make some mistakes. She said, it's all about you. And I said, wasn't that the idea? And she said, no, you've got to lead with something about your prospect or your client. So I reshaped the whole thing. And also look at your competitors and see what they've got. You might get some ideas of how you can shape it. There's limitations on numbers of characters and things, I run courses on this that take a lot longer than a short interview. But what I'm really saying is take responsibility for your own profile. Don't leave it to an assistant, no matter how capable.
While you've been talking about that, what struck me is, can you be all things to all people, or should you be picking your real key skill and where you want to be as a complete narrow target? How broad a brush should you deliver to LinkedIn versus how specific? Obviously, if you're incredibly specific, you'll eliminate 99% of the population looking at your LinkedIn profile or the business profile. How does that work?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is that as well as having what's static on your profile and on your company page, you can also be doing updates, regular updates. So you can tell your, that's what I say to people, tell stories, because that's what we do in business anyway, in the offline world. We exchange stories and people get to think, he or she knows what we're talking about, knows our business, knows our industry. And so I say, and I haven't done enough of this, again, sort of once that plumber's house always leaks, that I think that what I'm trying to say is use the opportunity to do updates. And it might even be, today is my second day back at work after a holiday, I'm really looking forward to the year ahead, and I wish everybody a happy new year. That's an update. People will see your name, see what you're doing. So you're a human being, you're not a profile. Does that make sense? Also, you can use LinkedIn publishing. And you can use, if you've written blog posts or articles in the past, you can put them onto what they call LinkedIn Pulse. So there's an opportunity to be adding content. A video, if you've got a video, put it on your LinkedIn profile, put it on your LinkedIn page, which shows you as a person, not just a brand. Does that make sense?
It's really good, yes, that's good. I really feel like I've got a lot out of this chat. What I wouldn't mind you finishing off with is, what are some of the don'ts? Because I'm now understanding there's a lot more I could do.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that I shouldn't be doing?
Okay. One of the things that curiously people do is that they sometimes set up, this is not a lot of people, but every now and again someone sets up a personal profile under a company name, and that's a big no-no. So just don't do it. And usually it's just through ignorance, you know. And I say to people, what about a company page? They say, what's that? So I explain that. The thing we've talked about, don't connect with somebody and pitch them with your first response. And the flip side of that is, see if there's something you could do. Somebody sent me some information, sent me an invitation to network with him today, but he was in a field that I don't work in. And instead of just saying, no, that's not for me, I looked at what he was doing and say, hey, I've had a couple of thoughts about how you could do what you're doing even better, if you don't mind me sharing. And I shared a couple of thoughts. So that's human contact, you know. So don't pitch them straight away. Try to establish some basis of conversation. If they're in your neighbourhood and you're now connected with them, they may have their phone number on the contact details. They may at least have their email. Contact them off LinkedIn and say, hi, you want to have a coffee down at the beach, you know, whatever it happens to be. So that's another way of doing things. But don't just pitch them. And don't wait for a year, never contacting them, and then suddenly ask them to do something to spend a lot of money on you know? So that's the related thing. What else? That's really the main thing. And respect the fact that people have a lot of things coming through their inbox, and when you try and get their attention, you'll get their attention much better if you have kept in touch. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I suppose the last closing one is, people talk about photographs and the image they present.
Yes.
How important is it to get that really schmick, whether you want to call it professional photo, etc.
The first thing I say is, try not to have those like passport photos, or what I call a mug shot, you know, where you look as if you've been caught by the camera and doing something wrong. People put those up still. The second one is, you're presenting your professional profile. The fact that you love your dog, or you love being out on your yacht, may not be part of your professional profile unless you're alternatively a dog specialist or a yacht salesperson, you know. So people have pictures of themselves almost unrecognisable because they're in the distance. They have pictures with pets. People have pictures with another person because they love their spouse or their child or whatever. And, you know, people are flicking through. Do I know this person? Do I know this person? And so the other thing is, try and get consistency across social platforms. If you've got a different photograph, or if the photograph on LinkedIn looks nothing like the photograph of you on Facebook, people might not want to connect with you. I don't know this guy, you know, but if they see the photo there. So then, professional. there are people who do professional headshots, and that can cost you a few $100s, and sometimes people don't have a loose few $100s lying around for that. There are often people they know who are really good at taking photographs, but try and take a photograph get a photograph taken that shows you as professional, whatever that means. You know, it might in some industries mean wearing a tie. You know, if you're an accountant or something, some of them still do, I suppose. But a professional shot is really a headshot, because they often see people seeing it on their mobile phone. They mightn't be able to see the detail. So, a photograph that's clearly you, that makes you look preferably pleased rather than sour, in some way professional. You can still smile or that. And I would say, you know, the sort of slightly angled one is okay, but professional, in inverted commas, I know one guy here on the coast who would say, tell people they have to get a professional headshot by our company. But some people just, especially small business, often don't have that. Often people have friends or family members who are just starting out in photography, and they can say, can we do a deal? You know, I'll help you with something and you take some shots from me. I did that with a client recently. He said, I know someone who can do that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Des. I appreciate the input you've had, and it definitely gives me a lot more thought, and hopefully our viewers a lot more thought about how they can use LinkedIn and make it work for them, not just to get work, but to build a network and communicate so they can build relationships.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I thank you, Frank. And I just, people will read blog posts and stuff that say LinkedIn's finished, the action's all at Facebook. Don't believe it. They've been saying that for 10 years or so. It's still going strong.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.